Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, call on your Allah. Adonai Yahweh, Bashem, Shamalak Yahushai, Bashem, Hakadash, double honors and apostles and elders, we have no strong peace, citation, hope for Allah, Shalom. And the title of this video, I may title it, Female Doctor Poisons Her Husband with Drano in California. And it says right here, Dr. caught on camera allegedly poisoning her husband with Drano. It says, an Irvine, California man says he has 3 videos proving his wife's been poisoning him with Drano since at least July. CBS Los Angeles reports the videos are from July 11th, 18th, and 25th. And quote, she takes up the bottle, she pours it in, puts the cap back on, and puts it back under the sink as though nothing else was happening in her day, said the husband's lawyer, Stephen Hittleman. Court documents contain what authorities and Hittleman say are screenshots from the videos from the couple's kitchen. Dermatologist Yu, 45, was arrested last Thursday for allegedly poisoning her husband of 10 years. According to the Irvine Police Department, Yu's husband, Dr. Jack Chen, had fallen ill over the course of a month and had grown suspicious that the illness came at the hand of his wife, whom he believed was poisoning him. In quote, he started to have unusual symptoms back in March and April, said Hittleman. In quote, he went in to get checked by a doctor and found that he had physical effects. He started to then connect the dots. Aside from the chemical taste in his mouth, Chen was diagnosed with stomach ulcers, gastritis, and inflammation of the esophagus. He then set up cameras in the kitchen at the family's home and made the discovery, according to his lawyer. Chen filed for a restraining order against his wife, who also goes by the name Emily. She's been released from jail. In the paperwork, he alleged long-time verbal, physical, and emotional abuse that extended to their 2 children. In quote, if our children let Emily know that they enjoyed spending time with me or showed affection toward me, then Emily would put them in their room and yell at them until they assured her they would not show affection toward me, Chen wrote in the restraining order request. Chen has filed for divorce. Wow. And going in more depth of the article, this was posted about 3 hours ago for this article. Some articles have different pieces of information, so, just trying to get the full side of the story to the best way I can. So, it says, in California and Orange County, doctors accused of poisoning her husband with Drano. Detectives have now released some of the video they said they used to build a case against her. Stephen Hittleman, the lawyer representing Jack Chen, said Chen's wife tried to kill him by poisoning him with Drano. Chen said he had 3 videos to prove it. Screenshots taken from cameras hidden in the couple's house were presented. They allegedly showed the suspect, 45-year-old Yu, who is also a local physician, pouring the drain cleaner into her husband's lemonade. She takes up the bottle, she pours it in, puts the cap back on, and puts it back under the sink as though nothing else was happening in her day, quote, Hittleman said. And quote, very calm, very methodical. Yu was arrested last week after the images were brought to the Irvine police. Hittleman said his client has been sick for months. And quote, so he started to have unusual symptoms back in the spring of this year, March and April, he said. And quote, he went in to get checked by a doctor and found out he had some physical effects, and he started then to connect the dots. Aside from the chemical taste in his mouth, Yu's husband was diagnosed with stomach ulcers, gastritis, and inflammation of the esophagus. He then set up cameras in the kitchen at the family and made the discovery, according to Hittleman. Soon after, Chen filed a restraining order against his wife, who also goes by the name Emily. In court documents, Chen alleges long-time verbal, physical, and emotional abuse, which extended to their 2 children if they, in quote, let Emily know they had enjoyed spending time with me. He said the abuse would also occur if the children showed affection towards him. In documents, Chen said Yu would put the children in their room and yell at them until they stopped showing him affection. Chen said he has filed for divorce. You was held on $30,000 bail and has since bailed out. The district attorney has not yet filed charges. Yeah, man, that's really insane. But now, without further ado, I'll get into some scriptures, and Lord willing, you hopeful let me be edified. So Deuteronomy 30 verse 7 says, I'm going to start with this first and foremost out of all scriptures, because this is beautiful to see. It says, and the Lord thy God will pour all these curses upon thy enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. All right. So now you're starting to see that, Moab getting the curses of their own woman going against them. And you can even see in their, in those Asian countries, like, even over there, some of the men are starting to turn towards sex robots, and they starting to have sex dolls, and they're starting to kind of pretty much moving away from their woman, and because they realizing that this feminism has corrupted the minds of their own woman. And yeah, but so for so long, and for being over here in this country, America, like, you see that our own women are against us. You got the so-called Black, Hispanic, Native American women, which are considered to be Israelite women. They're against us, and these are the curses that's according to Deuteronomy 28 that happened to our people. But the Lord is also avenging our people at the same time, because now it's happening to these heathens. You're starting to see their women going against them, and they're filing for divorce, their men against their own women. They gotta pay child support, or they gotta pay alimony and shit like that. So the curse is starting to attack them now. So that's a beautiful thing to see. And it also ties up with this curse too. It says, Isaiah 19 verse 2, and I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. Alright. And pretty much right there, seeing that they were the same people, seeing that they were Moabites and they're fighting against each other, and the families being kind of broken up, that structure of the family, and that's what feminism has caused, like, for families to be against each other. Like, you got the woman thinking that she's equal to the man, and then she trying to do shit against her man to be wicked as all hell, and then when they see that the kids are showing some sort of appreciation towards the father, that's when the mother get jealous and want to be put in the on the scene to be a fucking demon, and she want to basically try to influence those kids to be against the man. That's what feminism caused. It caused the destruction of the family household. And for so long, it has been happening to our people, so-called Black, Hispanic, Native American people. But seeing it happening to these heathens now, where they're starting to go against each other, is a beautiful thing. And Egyptian against Egyptian is not really only referring to those actual Egyptians, but it's just basically saying it's going to happen to the heathens, like the curses, according to Deuteronomy 30 verse 7 that I brought out, that how the Lord's going to put all the curses upon thy enemies. Because at the end of the day, these heathens being on top of us and seeing Jake at a lower state and not trying to help Jake out, they like to see us in this lower state, and they had a hand on oppressing us, because at the end of the day, it's like they're still profiting off of us. They're not donating any money to us. They're not trying to find a way to basically get us out of our situation. They see the curses on our people, and they appreciate that. And when it's coming to these heathens, they have good jobs, they got businesses in their names, they got they're up in this society, and they actually are benefiting off of our they're benefiting off of our downfall. And they've been doing this for such a long time. Scripture said, Ecclesiastes 25, verse 13, give me any plague but the plague of the heart, and any wickedness but the wickedness of a woman. All right. Any affliction but the affliction from them that hate me, and any revenge but the revenge of enemies. There is no head above the head of a serpent, and there is no wrath above the wrath of the enemy, especially when the enemy is of your own household, and it just so happens to be a wicked woman. Boy, you know, she gonna try to afflict you while you unaware. It's like you're gonna have to have a camera in your own domain while she doesn't know about the camera. You know, because they do have cameras out there in your home that look like everyday objects to where nobody could tell that that was a camera. Those are the type of cameras that you should get without telling your woman, you know, if you just so happen to be dealing with a, let's just say, a girlfriend or so, you know. And that's the reason why, another thing too, scriptures will tell you not to seek a wife, because these women, they're put on a pedestal in the society, you know, and they pretty much have it to where they have that mindset where they feel like they can never have enough, and they always feel like you always got to keep giving them, you know, more. And scripture say in Ecclesiastes 25 verse 16, I had rather dwell with a lion and a dragon than to keep house with a wicked woman. Exactly. Because when it's coming to a wicked woman, it's like you don't know the shit that she's finna do to you, you know, sometimes. The whole time she could be preparing a meal for you, and then she could be poisoning it, preparing like a smoothie or something for you, and then they could have poison in it, like Drano, like this bitch, you know, did to her husband, you know. And then the kids, like, they eventually have to deal with the wrath of the wicked ass woman, you know. Being a kid growing up, it's like it's horrible having to deal with a wicked woman, you know. And this bitch was set. They gave her you know, they set her bail to a certain price. She was able to pay for it, and then she bailed out. But they said that there may be some further charges because you know, he has that doctor, the husband has an attorney, and he's finna pretty much put her you know, probably like they're still building the case against her. So, and Ecclesiastes 25 it says, verse 19, all wickedness is but little to the wickedness of a woman, let the portion of a sinner fall upon her, you know. And verse 21, stumble not at the beauty of a woman, and desire her not for pleasure. Right. You see, they also said she was being verbally abusive, and if I'm not mistaken, they probably also mentioned physically abusive towards her husband. Yeah, and they also mentioned that he was not only that she was verbally and physically abusive towards her husband, but it will extend to the children as well. So it really shows you right there that you shouldn't really desire a woman for pleasure and shit like that. And honestly, I feel like the best thing to do is just to, as a man, you know, is to remain single. And if you just so happen to deal with a woman, just don't go as far as having kids with a woman, and don't go as far as like going to the marry a woman through the church or a court system or so, like having to sign all these documents and making her married to you, because it's like, this is what these women will put you through, because they feel like they need to be put on a fucking pedestal, and they feel like they need to have the world given to them on a silver platter, or a golden platter for that matter, because they feel like they want the best quality of every damn thing, you know. 441 calling me out the Shah. And yeah, that's what it is. And scriptures even say, give the water no passage, need that wicked woman liberty to get abroad. Exactly. And scriptures also talk about like how if you don't keep a daughter straight, if you don't keep her in check, they're gonna abuse themselves with over much liberty. And these women, that's what Esau has done with all these women, especially with our women too. You know, he has given them fucking over much liberty, and has given them the leeway to do what the fuck they please, you know, so they could have you know, some sort of higher level in the society, to where they actually emulate the man's position, like they're actually above a man, or They actually are on a man's level. But yet here it is, they want another man to jump in when they have to face the consequences because they can't. They just so happen to not have the capability of handling the consequences of being equal, or for the most part superior to a man. You know, they can't deal with what a man could deal with in terms of consequences, but yet they want to be able to call the shots and try to have a sort of a dominion, you know, have sort of like a rulership over a man, or just like men. Sickening. And scriptures in Ecclesiastes chapter 26 verse 7 says, an evil wife is a yoke shaken to and fro. He that have hold of her is as though he held a scorpion. And when you just so happen to be with these women, man, especially one that poisons you, you poison your drink or your food while you're not aware. It's like, yeah, she's no different than a damn scorpion. 444. Call me. I'm pushing my shot for that. Yeah. And even in verse 10, like I mentioning, it says, if thy daughter be shameless, keep her in straitly, lest she abuse herself through overmuch liberty. And more than likely, this bitch probably never had she probably never had a father in her life, or even if she just so happened to have a father in her life, he most likely never had wisdom like this, to where he will raise a woman to be, sincere and trying to raise a woman to basically not abuse herself or overmuch liberty and things of that nature. Because a lot of the times in households, they like to kick the father out the household because they realize that Esau knows that when it's coming to the father, they bring order to the family. But it just so happens to be, no order nowadays, because what they do is they give the woman the power. So the father, if he just so happens to be in the household, he has to do whatever the wife says and shit like that to basically be with the woman, so that he won't have to divorce her and pay alimony or child support, which is fucked up. Last scripture I'll bring out is Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 26. And I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands as bands. Whoso pleaseth Yahweh shall escape her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. Exactly. And shouldn't really be upset. You shouldn't really be vexed that you're not dealing with a woman in the sense where you want to marry a woman or be a girlfriend or whatever. And if any of the day, you should be pretty much thanking the Most High in a way that you're not dealing with a woman like that, because you see shit like this, man. Shit like this is crazy. And when it's coming to a lot of these heathen men, like they have like that simp spirit on them, to where they want to marry a woman, and they want to put a woman on an equal level as them. And this is what happens when you think a woman is equal to you, or think a woman is superior to you. She ends up failing you. You see? This is what happens. That feminism shit is really just destructive to not only the woman herself, because scriptures also say that even though she's in pleasure, like, she's dead while she liveth in pleasure. Because deep down inside, a woman is supposed to be pretty much beneath a man, and they're supposed to be put in their place when they think that they're above a man and shit like that, and thinking that they could rule over a man. That's completely out of order. And for the most part, feminism is not even it wasn't really, there was a purpose behind feminism, and it wasn't really necessarily meant for women to basically, it wasn't really meant for women of other nations, and it was mostly for the white woman, for the most part, for the so-called white woman. And this is like the Rothschild, the Rockefellers, they pretty much funded that feminism shit any damn way, because they realized that that was a great way to kind of keep the family being broken up, the family's unit to be destroyed, to keep men. It's pretty much like a psychological warfare that that happens with these things, you know. And when a man feels like he doesn't have his woman in league with him, he feels destroyed, you know. And it keeps so much problems, um, in the household, that people eventually, they don't think about they don't think outside the box, and try to see who's causing these problems and how these problems stem about. They just figure that, you know, they just gonna keep fighting against each other and shit like that. And feminism was a great way for them to even pretty much tax not only the male population, but for them to tax the female population too, because half of the population being taxed when, you know, when men was taxed at that time, before a woman was able to work and stuff. But now, since over time, since women were able to work, with the woman's lib, you know, they pretty much were able to tax female and males. And they were also allowed to stop the homeschooling thing, in a way, because now when you have both parents working, that was keeps the children in schools, and they start accepting the indoctrination. And after the dollar has been removed from the gold and silver standard, because you got to keep in mind that the Gold Reserve Act, and you also have to keep in mind about the Federal Reserve Act that happened in 1913, and then around the 1930s, the Gold Reserve Act happened, where they removed the gold and silver standard from the U.S. dollar, making the dollar useless. And then, after having World War I and World War II, that's what weakens the economy. So, you know, pretty much like taxing not only men but taxing women too is what just so happened to have the society to keep going. And also, when you look at it, like, feminism also was a great ploy to not only destroy the household, but just to keep the society pretty much going, because you got men, like the scripture saying, First Ezra chapter 4, that they run out their wits for women, and they become servants for these women's sakes. So, they are out here, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all these fucking holidays, especially like Valentine's Day and Christmas, or like, I'll say, and even on the woman's birthday, those are like, those top days where men will go out their way to try to please a woman, buying her XYZ. It's never about the man, it's always about the woman and the kids. And that's, that's Satanism right there, So, back in the ancient times, it was all about the man, and the woman was actually last, and she was supposed to be serving her man and bowing down to her man. Now everything is all pretty much upside down ever since Esau came into power. But with that, I hope I made the lesson edifying. I'd like to give all glory, praise, and honor to Adonai Yahweh, Ba'ashem Shamalak, Yahushua, Ba'ashem Kakadas, double honor to the apostle and the elder named Millstone, peace, citation, hope for elect. Yahweh Shem Shalom, Shalak Rayam, Arawam Yam, Wago Yam, Wa Ababa Shalom.